You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Stephen Willis. I am the host of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, and I'm joined by Dalen Flowers. He's joined us quite a bit on this channel, and this is a very special game for Dalen, by the way. For those who do not know, Dalen is from Arkansas. He grew up a Hog fan. He goes to school at Ole Miss, and he goes to every Ole Miss home football game and sporting event now that he can. So this is a conflicted game. Is that a good word, Dalen?
It definitely is. It's had some great ties to it since I started my time in college. Some very close family members and I have now begun the tradition of going to the Ole Miss and Arkansas game every year. So we tailgate, set up, and it's just become a great tradition to see some family members around this time of the year every year. So it's tough. You go in. I went my freshman year in the Fayetteville, and you're like, I don't know who to support. So I try to stay neutral and try to just enjoy the game of football. But it's kind of, my emotions do run high on both sides of the ball. But it's definitely, it's a lifelong kind of just achievement. I think, I really am, I have a great history of college members in my family, but none were really able to go out outside the state of Arkansas for college. So I was just blessed to be able to come to Ole Miss, and to even have that opportunity to come here was great. And so it's always it's a fun game for me, just in terms of being able to be with my family, enjoy it with them.
So there's two more home games. So there's been two SEC games so far that you've probably been to in the stadium. How's the atmosphere in the stadium this year compared to like the other years that you've been at Ole Miss?
Man, it's definitely been great. I think, I hate to say this, I think that the Kentucky loss ended up taking a little bit of life out of just the environment in general. But it's definitely been great. I think the sellouts have been phenomenal to see, and just the engagement with the fans based off in stadium engagement, and even social media has brought the fans. Not only expectations were high this year, but I think those things brought fans into the stadium really well this year. It's been fun. I think I've seen the noise definitely grow a little bit more over the past few years, and that, of course, has come with, seeing more students and more people involved with wanting to see the team succeed a lot this year. But it's been really fun. I think the team has also implemented a lot more entertainment ways to keep the crowd going and keep the crowd live, keep the crowd loud in between timeouts and commercial breaks and things like that. So I've seen a lot of improvements on that area from the football team. It's really been really good. I've seen a lot of improvements from previous years. And that's something that, I haven't really talked about too much, but I honestly harp on a lot. And I went to Baton Rouge a few weeks ago, and I'm glad to see that we kind of implemented some changes, because I hate to say it, but Baton Rouge really was something that I really can't put into words, of how just kind of great it was, and just the environment, the music, the entertainment, the show, the noise. It's great to see that the Vol Hemingway is really stepping forward in terms of stadium atmosphere and stadium entertainment.
Yeah, and Ole Miss fans should take solace in the fact that they set the second all-time attendance record. They're number 2 on the list against Furman. And after that, they've broken the attendance record each and every week. And if Ole Miss beats Arkansas, they're going to break it again for Georgia. Now, they probably won't break it for Mississippi State, but they're still going to have probably north of 67,000 in that game.
Absolutely. And Brad, Stephen, I've been hearing people talk about the Georgia game before the season started, on Facebook, on social media, in town, just people from all over the country excited for this game. And I think it's, my freshman year, I remember Bama coming to town. I think there was about 200,000 people in Oxford that weekend. I expect to see north of maybe 230, 250 in that area for the Georgia game. I'm hearing many, many people are obviously excited about the opportunity, but just to see two great football teams come into Oxford and play a good game, we don't get Georgia too often down here. And so I think that also brings another excitement to it. And, Kirby Smart just came off a great win in Austin. I think that brings some more excitement in Georgia's, kind of rebounding off their Bama loss earlier in the season. And I think as well, Ole Miss fans are excited to see, okay, we've got 2 losses that, are kind of questionable, but can we finish this half of the season strong? And I think that Georgia game is definitely going to be an explanation of how good we were last year compared to now, because, I think something else that's kind of big going in that game, a lot of people talked about after losing to Georgia last year, how can we recruit better? How can we be better on the line of scrimmages after that Georgia game? That was something even Lane Kiffin talked about a lot that game. So I think this is that Georgia game is definitely going to be an excitement factor for a lot of many reasons. But it's definitely going to be a great test for our football team as well.
And before we move on to the Arkansas game, did you have any run-ins, interactions with Oklahoma people? Because everything I saw online was positive.
Yeah, I for the most part I did. You know, I had a few OU people that I had already knew they were coming to the game and interacted with them, and a lot of them, except for maybe one person, it was their first time in Oxford, and I heard nothing but great things about the Grove and the tailgating, and the overall atmosphere in town of Oxford. They enjoyed it for the most part. I think that this was something that I was glad we got one of the new teams, Texas OU, coming to Oxford this year, because they don't really get to experience, the SEC like that, obviously, before this year, and especially what it's like on the game day in Oxford, Mississippi. And so it was great. I think, it was definitely a welcome environment. Some of the more nice fans that I've met over my time here, and they were definitely respectful, and enjoyed a lot of what we had to bring in on a Grove game day. I think it would have been a little bit better if it wasn't 11 a.m., but I still think they definitely got a good gist of what it's like on a Saturday here in Oxford, Mississippi.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first and listen every day. When we come back, we are going to turn the page to the Arkansas Razorbacks and talk about that in a little bit. Stick around. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can get $5. They can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if they win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gets you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. Currently, Ole Miss is a 6.5-point favorite over Arkansas, but we all know how weird this series can be. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view the latest play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com and join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Every moment means more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Game Time is the place to get your Ole Miss tickets. Like it's the only place to get your Ole Miss tickets since they're all sold out. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from receipts, and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets. There's not a bad seat in Vaught Hemingway Stadium or even the Pavilion for that matter, but they have the views from each and every seat in the arena, so you know what you're looking at before you buy the tickets. They have lowest price guarantees, event cancellation, job loss protection, all of the customer service stuff you would be interested in. Take the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets with Game Time, and with this being the most anticipated season in Ole Miss history, I might even be able to help you out with tickets as well. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Dalen, this is a big game for Ole Miss because of what this Georgia game would mean down the road, but also because Arkansas is a good team. They're 5-3 right now. Ole Miss is 6-2. Ole Miss is probably favored by about a touchdown. Ole Miss likely has the better team, but they do not play clean football right now, and that has been their detriment and the reason they have 2 losses right now. This game is going to come down to a matchup between Bobby Petrino and Pete Golding. I think this game is going to be all about those two, and Taylen Green at quarterback is the straw that stirs the drink, but the main thing is Bobby Petrino versus Pete Golding.
It's definitely going to be fun. I was blessed when I was born in 2004. So the first kind of Razorbacks teams that I remember were the Bobby Petrino head coach. And I see Steven looking at me right now like, how are you that young?
I was out of the Navy when you were born.
Man, this is why I love coming on, man. I just bring a little bit of youth and versatility to you, man, that you don't get too often with anybody else, man. So I love that I can come on every now and then and bring that to you, man.
I was working at Ole Miss in 2004.
So that's how relatively young I am compared to Steven, ladies and gentlemen that are watching and are trying to understand just what the future of sports and media is. This is how young I am. But Bobby Petrino, Ryan Mallett, those are the guys that I remember. The first Razorback teams I remember growing up. So I've seen Bobby Petrino in the SEC for a long time at A&M last year and what his system kind of is. And it's crazy that Taylen Green isn't the typical Bobby Petrino type of quarterback, but he's really fit really well with Bobby Petrino, in my opinion. I know you're saying if I say that because
He's doing a lot of the stuff he did with Lamar Jackson at Louisville.
And that's something that I will say. I think that, when he gets a guy that is very athletic, watch out. And, I think Taylen Green has come into his shells really well over this latter part of the season. I think the first couple of weeks he struggled just kind of understanding the system, understanding SEC play, and kind of being in a new environment. How can I be comfortable? But Bobby Petrino's done a fantastic job. And they have a great offense, a very smooth running game as well, led by Jaquindon Jackson, and Braylon Russell has looked really, really well as a running back too. So they have a two-headed monster at the running back position that Pete Gold's going to have to step up and really disguise a lot of different opportunities for this defense. One big thing I want to bring up is, watching the OU game this past weekend. And even Garrett Nussmeier and Brock Vandagriff did this pretty decently as well. But Jackson Arnold did this really well. When a play didn't work out for OU, I watched Jackson Arnold use his legs a lot against Ole Miss this past weekend. And, I kind of question, why didn't we put a spy in? Why don't we have someone watching that? And that can go back and forth. But we're going to have to prepare a lot of that for Taylen Green this weekend. Taylen Green, they won't call a lot of just scramble plays, but he uses his legs. He's a long leg guy, athletic, and can get up the field with great strides. Pete Golden is going to have to set up for a quarterback that can use his arm and his legs very well. And that's going to be one of the big pieces of this game. And as well, how do we stop the open field tackles? I saw a bit of, kind of problems with that this past weekend. And even getting in the backfield. I think we got in the backfield against OU really well, but we didn't finish the plays and we missed out on a lot of sacks that we could have had. And so those are going to be some key things off the top of my mind for this upcoming weekend against Bobby Petrino. You're going to see a lot of things that you may be like, wow, I've never seen that before from Bobby Petrino. And that's all going to be, how can Pete Golding adjust? And I think he did really well against OU coming out of halftime at that part as well.
Yeah, and Jackson Arnold and Garrett Nussmeier and even Brock Vandagriff at some degree. Ole Miss played a lot of two-man in those games, so that allowed the quarterback to run the football because they weren't normally on film running the football. Jackson Arnold was an athletic guy, but he wasn't running the football before. Ole Miss is not going to be playing two-man against Taylen Green. I guarantee that Ole Miss is going to be in some sort of a three-man shell, playing some sort of a zone defense a good bit of the time and trying to disguise whenever they slip in the man coverages, because they cannot get into a situation against Taylen Green to where the backs are turned to the football and Taylen Green can just run. Because then what happened against Mississippi State is going to happen to you.
And that's a great point. I think, like I kind of just said, a lot of the times I watch Taylen run the football, they're not even quarterback draws or quarterback scramble plays from behind the line of scrimmage. It's just a play that he has to make happen on his own, and he's a freakish athlete. He has a really good size at quarterback, and he moves really well. He can stop and go on just about any defender, I'd probably say, in the conference. So that's going to be a big position. How can we stop him from getting outside and making those things happen? But as well, how can our secondary maybe play up a little bit and play a little bit more aggressive when they need to stop him from having those big plays? I noticed we bring in, Kari Coleman and TJ Daugherty a lot on third down, and keep Sunterian Prickett on that edge. I think that's going to be really big key as well. Arkansas, I think, third in the conference on third downs this season. They really have a high progression on third down rate. How can we get off the field without a penalty, without giving up big third down plays, and effectively get our offense back on the field in those third down situations?
Speaking of, just because you brought that up, Arkansas this past weekend against Mississippi State scored 58 points in the game. They were 0 for 7 on third down. Mm-hmm. It's one of the weirdest stats ever.
And that's what's, I say that, and I'm glad you brought that up as well, because that's also the funky thing about football. Analytics and stats and numbers are so big, but as well, they also can't defy everything as well, because Arkansas puts up 58 points. But as well, that high third down percentage is 0 for 7 against Mississippi State. I think as well that I'm very proud of this defense is just how well they bought in. You bring a kind of a collection of almost new guys over the last 2 years under Pete Golding, and he's just completely transformed this Ole Miss defense into something that I haven't seen in a long time. And I really just want to give my props to him for doing that, and the players buying into what his system is. And Pete's done a really good job with Zach Arnett, I believe, this season, just truly analyzing what an offense is going to bring, what kind of coverage they can bring and disguises they can bring. And as well, if they're not working at a particular point of the game, how can they adjust to make those things better? I think one big thing against Arkansas as well is when Arkansas has the chance to get in the red zone, how do we stop them and only allow 0 or 3 points? I think when we get them in that area, we have to hold ground. And, I've seen us do that really well this season, and we're going to have to continue to do that in Fayetteville this weekend.
Yeah, one big part, Arkansas has scored 22 running touchdowns this year.
Yes.
Ole Miss has given up 1, and that was the fumble at the end of the Kentucky game that was recovered in the end zone. So it wasn't even a true running touchdown. It was a fluke play. But that 22 versus 1, and that's going to be a big story, because what a lot of people don't realize about Bobby Petrino and his offense, Taylen Green is going to be infinitely less effective if they have trouble running the football.
Yes.
And so Ole Miss really needs to bow up and do that. They need to have Suntarine Perkins as a true spy. They put him on Jalen Milroe. He was effective in that game. Taylen Green is the same type situation. I think Ole Miss matches up against Arkansas pretty well. What Arkansas does really well is offensive. What Ole Miss is a defensive team. And I think Ole Miss's offense is better than Arkansas's defense, if that makes sense.
It does. And you won't, you'll see an occasion of the play action passes and the attempt for a big play type of situation from Bobby Petrino, but you won't see too much of it. Andrew Armstrong has had a pretty great year. And as well, Isaiah Satania, who is a very quick receiver, is a guy that they'll target a lot as well. So watch out for those 2 guys at the Arkansas receiving positions. Those are the 2 of their main guys. And as well, Luke Hasz, especially in that red zone. Luke Hasz is their tight end, leads the team in touchdowns this year. He's been a big piece in the red zone for Arkansas. So those will be some of the keys as well. And watch, I've raved about Chris Poopaw Jr. all year and all summer long. Expect this to be a big game for him. It's his return to Fayetteville. I know I'm sure we'll have a lot of thoughts in before the game this weekend, and family there as well. So watch him to, obviously continue that leadership role that we've seen him do really well this year, but as well kind of just take a more of a chip on his shoulder for this Arkansas game this weekend.
And also, this is trigger warning for Ole Miss football fans, because when you watch Taylen Green play football, he looks an awful lot like Matt Jones. And Ole Miss fans hate the sight of Matt Jones playing football in an Arkansas uniform.
That's true, man. And, just another personal tie. I remember the 4th and 25 like it was yesterday, and being on campus and hearing people talk about those moments. In the back of my head, I sit back and cringe because I don't want to be like, oh, I'm from Arkansas and I was on the other side at that time. So, like I said earlier, I love being a part of this Ole Miss program, but this is definitely going to be a fun game for me. And it should be a fun game for fans in general. This Arkansas Ole Miss game is always a funky one, but hopefully we can bring it back on to Oxford this year.
Yeah, I talked to John Neighbors from Locked On Razorbacks, and I'm going to have a crossover with him this week and everything. And I genuinely like playing Arkansas. Now, I like to pick at them, and I like to play the rivalry game and all that. I refer to Arkansas as the great value university, and, that their Jim Walter home of a stadium and all of that. And it's all in good fun, because I really genuinely, whenever I went up there and saw a game, I enjoyed it. I like that they called the Hogs. And on the 3rd time is when the players run out, because the actual is like they called them. Yeah. And it's cool. And they have a lot of traditions that are very Southwest Conference oriented, as opposed to SEC stuff. And it's neat. But yes, it is fun being a rival with Arkansas fans, because everybody talks like, who is Arkansas's rival? Everybody's been saying that ever since they came into the SEC. Ole Miss has always been Arkansas's rival. We don't play for a trophy, but we do play each and every single year.
I'd agree. And I think, this series is definitely, especially since I would say Pittman and Kiffin have come in, it's kind of gone a little back and forth as well. And even, in past years, I think Ole Miss has had some really big wins that have kind of deviated some kind of late season pushes from Arkansas and vice versa. Arkansas, I think that 2015 game, that 4th-25, Arkansas doesn't win that game, and Ole Miss more than likely goes to the SEC championship game that year. So it's definitely built definitely a good chemistry between the 2 teams. I think both teams look forward to playing each other every year. I remember the 2021 game, and how great that game was here in Oxford, and, just how close it was in the late game situations there. So it's definitely always going to be a fun one. And, I think Fayetteville doesn't really get the rap of, being one of the top stadiums, having one of the top stadiums in the nation. But Donald W is a place that, I know it's going to be an early game, but it's a place that can really get loud. It can be a really hostile environment. So I hope this Ole Miss team can go in early and take that crowd out a little bit like they did at South Carolina.
And just before we get out of here, I think that Arkansas and Mississippi State is going to become the new drunk game annually, just because Mississippi State is allergic to defense, but their offense is really good. So there could be some of those crazy games like that going on. Anyway, Dalen, what do you got going on this week, bud?
Man, just trying to take care of some tests and some events before I get out of here Friday. I'll be in Fayetteville Friday, and of course we'll be at the game Saturday with the family, and hoping to see Rebel Nation, man. Some of you guys have reached out to me this week, continue to do so. I'd love to meet you guys and talk sports with you, man. I love sports in general. So just reach out to me. I'll be in Fayetteville. I definitely would love to meet you guys and just talk sports, talk Rebel sports with you guys. It's going to be a fun game, and let's hope this Rebel offense gets it together and just put some points on the board against a Razorback defense that's really good as well.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Dalen Flowers from the Daylan Show. When is season 4 coming out, bud?
Season 5. Just finished season 4 about a month ago. In the works of season 5 right now. Don't have an exact date right now. I'm actually I've been thinking about doing more kind of outside season episodes with people and doing some more focal sports topics as well. So I may be working on that very, very soon. That's actually in the works. So we may see some more content like that come out. So make sure you follow the Daylan Show on social medias and subscribe on YouTube and listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can find us there. It's definitely a great time. Trying to get some more insightful conversations within sports and people in general on the show.
Dalen Flowers from the Daylan Show. Thank you very much, bud, and we'll talk to you later.
Of course, man. Howdy toddy, y'all.
Howdy toddy.